Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another video. We're back today with part 2 of Booktube Made Me, but with a twist of Booktube didn't make me. So in today's video we're going to be discussing all the books that I picked up by myself without kind of Booktube's influence or Bookstagram's influence. All the books I picked up by myself, and we're going to list the ones that I recommend and the ones that I don't recommend. I was more excited to film this video anyway because I get to talk and hype books up that I feel like deserve more hype. Some of these you may recognise because I have featured some favourites. One begins with the letter O. But overall, I'm really excited to talk about some of these books today. Obviously, I sprinkled a few in there that I don't think are really kind of worth reading. If you're interested in reading them, then you might want to stay clear after you've heard my thoughts. But once again, if your favourite books have made this list and there are ones I don't recommend, take this all with a pinch of salt. These are my own personal opinions, and books are so subjective. You could love a book that I could personally dislike, and that's absolutely fine. Everyone's different, everyone has different reading tastes, etc, etc. So a little disclaimer there, if your favourites on this list, I am sorry. But also, I just want to focus more on this video about raving about books that aren't really raved about on Booktube. So let's start off on a high note. The first books I'm going to recommend that Booktube didn't make me aware of is Lou Page's The 24-Hour Cafe. And I read this in 2021 when I did my first ever reading books set across 24 hours in 24 hours, and it was my first time reading a Lou Page book as well. And I just absolutely adored this book. This book basically follows our two main characters, Mona and Hannah, who live together as best friends, and they both work at the cafe down the road, which is open for 24 hours. And you get both perspectives in this book because Hannah takes the day shifts and Mona takes the night shifts, I believe. So you get the whole span of 24 hours through these two points of view because they take different cafe shifts. But not only do you get those point of views, you also get the point of views of characters within the cafe that come in. And what I love most about this book is the way that Lou Page wrote this book, that you got an insight to everyone's different lives, and there's an old man who's crying and you don't know what his story is, and then you kind of get a little bit about it. You get a gay couple who come in who are having to say goodbye because one of them gets deported. Like, there's so many different parts of life in this book that really just kind of open your eyes to anyone can be suffering with something that you don't personally know, so you can't judge anyone by what they're doing in public or what they're crying at or what they're happy about, because you just don't know their whole life story. And this book kind of shines a light on that sort of topic, and I absolutely adored it. I read it within 24 hours. I have a whole vlog about this book if you're interested in learning more of my thoughts, but I highly recommend this one. The Booktube doesn't rave enough about. Going on to one I don't personally recommend, I got recommended via Booktube and the book online community, is Little Lion by Brandy Colbert. I feel like this book was raved about quite a bit, although it's quite an older book. I want to say it was published in 2018, but it was originally written in 2017, so quite an old book now. And I only read it recently because it's been on my TBR for quite a while after getting intrigued by the synopsis after some people were talking about it, and unfortunately it just didn't kind of do it for me. Although this book is lovely and floppy, which we always love to see, the contents for me just kind of didn't do it. This book basically follows our main character, Susie or Suzette, who has a stepbrother. So she has a mother and a stepfather and a stepbrother, and they all kind of like come together as this one unit. Her stepbrother suffers from bipolar. I can't speak on behalf of this representation, but I do think it was done really well. But obviously check out Own Voices if you are interested in reading this book for kind of like a better understanding. But that's kind of like what the main premise follows. It follows Suzette, who finds out that her brother has this mental disorder, but because her parents don't want to worry about her brother because she's so close to him, she sends her off to boarding school for the entire year so that she can kind of like focus on herself and not kind of worry too much about her family. And her parents think this is the best idea for her, or the best kind of way for her to deal with it. However, it's not, as you follow her coming back after a year away and everything's kind of changed. There is an underlining romance in this book, which I don't think was needed. It basically has a love triangle thing, which I think is a little bit weird for a YA. And it basically is that Suzette falls for the same girl that her brother is dating. And her brother believes that this girl is kind of like fixing all his problems, and it's not. And he kind of starts to unfortunately derail and comes off his meds for his bipolar. And her sister feels like she is in charge of him and she needs to try and fix him. So it's a really interesting concept. Obviously not in a way that romance fixes everything, because it doesn't, and you need to like heal yourself before getting into relationships and that sort of stuff. So it does touch upon some interesting topics, but overall this book kind of didn't do it for me, and I personally don't recommend it unless you are interested in reading it. It does read quite young for a YA, and overall I just kind of like, it was fine, it was 3 stars, I just personally wouldn't recommend it. Back on to a book that I do recommend that no one I watch a lot of Booktube, I watch a lot of Instagram reels, I watch a lot of kind of book content, I consume a lot. I have never once heard or seen anyone take a picture of this book, talk about this book on a reel, feature this book in a video, nada, nothing. And I think it's well worth it. This is My America by Kim Johnson. This is a YA book that follows a... Why is my lighting gone weird? Follows our main character, Tracy, who has a father who's been wrongly accused of a murder, and he's on death row, and he only has like 240 days left until his death sentence. And she's on this mission to prove everyone wrong that he is innocent. And so she reaches out to a charity who help people get off death row who've been wrongly accused for free. So she keeps writing these letters into the charity called Innocent X, and she just keeps getting ignored. She gets ignored, and it basically follows her and her family trying to deal with the fact that her father is in death row, is wrongly accused, and they're trying to get him out before his kind of life sentence. And I just thought this book was so empowering. I loved the family dynamic in this book, because obviously that is basically what it's all centered around. And I just thought this book was really well done, and the fact that no one talks about this book, I highly, highly recommend it. A book that is 100% worth reading if you haven't heard about it, and I just feel like isn't really spoken about on the book community. Half a World Away by Mike Gale. I love this book. If you guys have been following my channel for a while, you know kind of the background to this book. I'll give a brief overview. I read this book originally 2020 because I went on Amazon because I needed a book to fulfill a readathon challenge prompt, which was to have a book with a house on the cover, and I was like, I don't own any. So I went to Amazon and just kind of like found the first book that I could see that had houses on the cover. It just so happened to be Half a World Away with Mike Gale. I read it in that readathon, I thought it was fine, I gave it 3 stars, but something in me made me keep the book. So a year later or so, I reread it, and oh my god, it was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. It's now one of my all-time favourite books. I've reread it since, and it still holds up to the hype. This book is incredible. This book basically follows our main character, Noah, our main character, Kerry. Kerry is a single mum who's really struggling, and she kind of just cleans houses for a living and kind of lives paycheck to paycheck. And then there's Noah, who's kind of more well off, as he's a successful barrister, and he has a beautiful wife, a loving family, a beautiful daughter, kind of like the complete opposite to Kerry. However, Kerry ends up contacting Noah because he is a sibling that she lost when she was only 6 years old, and you kind of follow the story of when Kerry cared for Noah, because their mother was a complete drug addict, and Kerry was slightly older than Noah. Noah was only a very young baby, and Noah completely cared for her until Noah got taken away into the foster system. And it's just an incredibly heart-wrenching, emotional read. It does suffer obviously from some difficult triggered topics such as cancer, losing someone, grief, all of these sorts of things that are like deep kind of dark topics it addresses, but in the most kind of like heartwarming, hopeful way. And I absolutely love this book. It's so good. The writing, the characters, the way Mike Gale makes you feel like the characters are real and really kind of pulls at your heartstrings by the end. I highly, highly recommend this book if you are interested in reading it at all, and if you can deal with the trigger warnings. It's just a really, really beautiful told story. I have featured this author's works in this video as a book that I really recommend that no one talks about. I'm now going to recommend another one of her books that no one talks about, and I personally don't think is worth the hype, but I'm keeping it because it's a pretty cover and I really should get rid of it because I only gave it 3 stars, and I think it was fine, and I think it was too long, and I didn't really feel that connected to characters. I think it might have just been, you know, it's one of those books where it was like, it was good, it was fine, it just, you personally didn't really enjoy it that much. And that's The Island Home by Libby Page. Obviously 24 Hour Cafe by Libby Page, one of my favourite books. Absolutely loved the characters. So I kind of had high hopes for this book because it was released after 24 Hour Cafe as her 3rd published book, and unfortunately it just didn't do it for me. I love the synopsis. This book basically follows 2 main characters, Lorena and Alice. Lorena lives in central London and has a daughter, and that's all they know. There's just the 2 of them. They live together, they keep things afloat. It's just kind of like an average life for them. And then you have Alice, whose world is kind of small but also massive in the fact that she lives on this little island and she has an entire community around her. What is special about this island that Alice lives on is that that's where Lorena grew up. And one summer, Lorena decides to take her daughter back to the island she grew up on, and it's finally the place where she feels like home. And it was a good kind of like character-driven book in the fact that you kind of felt a bit heartwarmed by the end of it in where the characters kind of finished, but it didn't need to be like 500 plus pages, almost 500 pages. Unfortunately, this book didn't do it for me, sadly. Do I leave the most obvious one till last? Maybe not. The next one I'm going to talk about, also a book that I recommend that Booktube just doesn't really talk about, I don't see much online. Are you surprised? I don't think so. I don't think I could have done this video and not mention this book. Obviously, this is Olive, and if you've been following my channel for a while, I feel like I do not need to say what this book is about and why I love it so much. But we're here, so we're going to do it anyway. And if you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. I am obsessed with this book. I don't know why, because I don't really relate to the characters at all. I don't think I've ever mentioned that when I talk about how much I love this book, is the fact that the topics it addresses don't actually affect me. I just find the writing and the characters so relatable in a different way. So this book basically follows our main character, Olive, who has a group of friends, and they never thought that they would kind of like drift apart. They were friends from school to uni. They were like this massive, like, they just really connected. They stayed together. They said that they would never kind of leave each other behind. They were going to always stay together. There's the four of them. And then you follow Olive as she starts to kind of drift away from them because they're having kids, they're settling down, they're getting married, they're buying houses, and Olive just isn't in that part of her life. She's just broken up with her long-term of 9 years boyfriend, and she's just kind of a little bit stuck because she doesn't feel like she wants marriage or kids or a kind of like typical stereotypical future. And all her closest friends that she believed they would stay close forever are starting to do these things, and Olive is like at this crossroads because she wants to kind of stay connected to her friends and keep up with the conversations about babies, about marriage, but she can't because she's not personally experiencing those things. She wants to stay true to who she is in the fact that she doesn't want kids and she doesn't want this future that everyone else seems to be having. I love that conversation. That conversation, I think, in this book is done so incredibly well, and I feel like a lot of people that I've recommended this book to really see themselves in the main character of Olive, of not wanting kids and the society's pressure to make you feel like you need to have kids. However, I want a kid. I want that stereotypical future. So for me, loving this book, I'm coming in from an outsider's perspective, and I just love, what I think I love most about this book is the friendship and the way Olive still manages to stay connected to her friends that are in different parts of their lives. Because I do feel like as you get older, you're so close to all your school friends for so long. You see them 5 days a week, you see them at the weekends, and you go to uni and then you're not with your close friends anymore, and then you start going down your own paths. And my friends are up north and some of my friends are central London and I'm kind of on the outskirts. I'm having this kind of like countryside sort of life with a fiance and a house, and in a few years it'll be a dog and a kid. And there's some of my friends who are younger than me or a little bit older than me who are in a completely different part of their life, which is absolutely fine, and I support them for that. So I feel like for me, I'm not connected to Olive, but I'm connected to her friends who are trying to still include Olive in kind of their lives and their like what's happening in their marriages and their kids and their relationships. I'm coming from the other side, and I think that's why I love this book so much, because I feel like I can be seen from the side characters, but from Olive's perspective and through her eyes, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But I just think this book, if you couldn't tell from all my tabs, is absolutely incredible. There's Friends references, there's Disney references, it's just a whole load of wonderful. There are some triggering topics in this book, such as IVF. One of Olive's friends, Isla, is going through the IVF treatment, so if that's a triggering topic for you, maybe skip this book. But it does kind of have this whole conversation on you can have kids the way you want, or you don't have to have kids at all, and I think this book is brilliant and it definitely needs more attention. Hi, I'm Rachel, I'm obsessed with this book, you need to read it. The last book I'm going to talk about in the fact that I think this book doesn't deserve the hype that it has, but bear with me, and I don't recommend it. It's Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. Okay, this is why, hear me out. I love Heartstopper. I have them all down here if you can't see. I absolutely love the comic series. I cannot wait for volume 5 this year. I cannot wait for season 2 of the TV show. I absolutely love it. It's a massive warm hug. I love the graphic novel series. I have a tricky issue when it comes to Alice Oseman's writing style when it isn't a graphic novel, i.e. I didn't like I Was Born for This, I didn't like Solitaire, which is also connected to the Nick and Charlie kind of series and universe. I don't think this book is worth it. Keep with the graphic novels, keep with the TV shows. You don't need to read this short story collection of Nick and Charlie. This one basically follows Nick, because he's a year older than Charlie, he's about to go off to university, and it basically is a 200 page book about Charlie being upset that Nick is leaving and Nick is not going to be with him all the time, and it just is a bit meh. It's a bit whiny, it's very YA, it's not really needed. I feel like you don't need to read this to feel like you have more in the Nick and Charlie universe. I don't think it adds anything. That's my personal opinion. It's just a lot of, but you're gonna forget about me, you're gonna miss me, you're not I just don't think it adds anything, unfortunately. Stick with the graphic novels, stick with the TV show. You can skip on this book. The only reason I'm keeping it is because it's the only book I have signed by Alice Oseman. I do think they are an incredible person. So yeah, I just don't feel like this book is worth it. Now let's end on a high. The last book that I'm going to mention in today's video is a book that isn't recommended on Booktube or Book Instagram or Book TikTok, that I personally feel is worth reading if you're interested. It's Black Buck by Matea Ascarapor. Like I said, a lot of my favourite books have featured in this video because I like to class myself as someone who doesn't always read what everyone else is reading, and I go out and find the books that I want to read by myself. And therefore, I praise myself and I take pride in myself that I can recommend books that no one else talks about, which is why I wanted to mention some of the highlights of my reading journey to date, because I do think I found some incredible gems that aren't spoken about on Booktube and that aren't spoken about in the book community that are really worth it. No matter what kind of mood you're in, I feel like I've got something for everyone, and I'd love to do a part 2 of this because I could take out my entire shelves and just recommend every book on here, because I feel like I do read quite a lot of books that are underhyped and not kind of loved on the book community. This is the last one I'm going to mention in today's video though, and this is what drew me to this synopsis when I first found out about it, is the fact that it was kind of marketed as a fictional self-help book, and that's because you follow our main character Buck, who is perfectly happy with his girlfriend and living a close, connected life with his mum, working as a kind of Starbucks coffee barista in this world. He works in the coffee shop at the bottom of the tower block, where each floor kind of has a different startup company. And he always kind of sell pitches different coffees to the customers that always come in and makes them try different coffees, and that's what he kind of excels at. And one day, the CEO of the startup company right at the top of the tower block comes in for his usual coffee, and Buck decides to give him a sales pitch on why he thinks that he should have a different coffee. And this pitch gets this guy's attention and offers Buck a position up at the startup company up at the top of the tower block. Buck is shocked. He doesn't want to leave his life. He's perfectly comfortable in working as a coffee barista and kind of seeing his girlfriend, his mum on weekends. He doesn't want to kind of like excel in his career, but he takes this opportunity. However, this is a completely white office. He is the only black employee, and there's a lot of racial slurs in this book. There's a lot of kind of racist topics addressed in this book because of the position that Buck is put in a lot of the time, which I think is really good to read because it does touch upon racism in the workplace. And I learned a lot from this book, but it's told from Buck's perspective, yes, but it's like Buck is the author of this book, not Matea Ascarapor, which means that he draws you out of the story ever so often and tells you when a good life lesson is coming up. So it does physically it is a self-help book, but in a fictionalized way. And I've never read a book like it before, and I think this book is brilliantly written, and I can't wait for Matea Ascarapor to write more books. I just haven't heard anything yet of his next novel, or whether he's even going to produce one. I don't know, but this book is so good, and I loved the fact that it took Buck on this journey that he wasn't expecting. He had to try and navigate this world that he wasn't used to, and it really took him out of his comfort zone. Yet he made kind of like different friends, and he kind of got a different perspective on life through this process, and I really, really enjoyed this book. I think this book is well worth it. If you're interested in reading it, I highly, highly recommend picking it up, and if you can get your hands on it, do it, read it. It's really, really worth it. I promise you, it's worth it. It needs more love. So those are all the books I'm going to recommend / not recommend to you today. Let me know if I've given you interest in any of these books. Do you want to pick up Black Buck? Do you want to pick up Olive? Do you want to pick up Half a World Away? Like, let me know in the comments down below if I've made you interested in picking up any of these books today. I'd love to know. If you'd like to see a part 2 of this specific side of this video, so I just recommend more unloved books on Booktube, I would love to do it and recommend some more books to you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you get a massive thumbs up and comment down below if you think I would enjoy any books that are unloved on Booktube. I want you guys to give me book recommendations as well, because like I said, I love finding books that are kind of underloved on Booktube. So let me know if you have any recommendations down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any future content. I do anything from monthly TBRs, monthly wrap-ups, weekly reading vlogs, themed reading vlogs, and fun bookish content like the one you're watching right now. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future content, and without further ado, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.